the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board. And today we have some new people, and we will take time during our roll call and introduction to do some introductions so we can all get acquainted. At this time, I will call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call.
Okay, we have Mayor Jones,
Here.
Councilmember Skip Jorgensen. You need to unmute.
Excuse me, I am here.
Thank you. Would you like to do an introduction?
Sure, I'm a member of the Ferndale City Council. I'm a native of Ferndale, although I have lived outside the area for many years, both in McKinleyville and Sonora. I've got much to learn, and I look forward to doing so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Here.
Councilmember Robert Orr, Councilmember Jack West,
Here.
Mayor Kim Burgell,
Here.
and Supervisor Madrone.
Present.
Thank you. And Chair Johnson,
Here.
and PAC Member Arroyo,
Here.
and PAC Member Allstrand.
Here.
Thank you.
And thank you all. At this time, we will adjourn as the HCOG Board and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee, or the PAC. And it looks like our first order of business is a presentation on Highway 101, specifically the Broadway corridor and through into the Eureka Safety Corridor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to share my screen here. We'll get started. So if everyone could let me know when I go into presentation mode, if you see the presenter's view or the view you should see full screen.
Presenter view.
What about now? Still presenter view?
This is like a different presenter view. It just shows us the next slide.
Are you seeing two slides at once?
Yes.
Okay, let me just move this box to another screen and that should solve it. What about now?
We're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks good.
You only see one slide now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Pimentel. I'm a project manager for Caltrans here in District 1, and I was asked to come provide an update on various projects in the kind of greater Eureka, Arcata region. And that is the region that most of my projects I manage sit within. So I know from time to time I've come to either HCOG board or other boards and organizations to provide project updates, but it's been a little while since we've done a real comprehensive look at everything we're working on that or recently has been completed or projects that are about to go to construction. So after going through this, you're gonna really get a good sense for over the last 2 or 3 years, what we've done, what's about to happen, and what we've got in the pipeline coming. So with that, I will have a Q&A at the end. So we'll have time for that. And as everyone, some of you may be aware, and I shared this with Beth to share this information last week, but we do have a public meeting this evening at 5:30 for one of the projects I'm gonna cover. I am going to spend a little bit more time on that project since some of you likely probably can't go to the public meeting at 5:30. So I'm going to try to spend a little bit more time on that and provide just some additional details. And don't worry, it will be recorded. It will be posted on the project webpage, and I will provide a link to that as well in this presentation. So with that, I'll get going. All right, so just to kind of give a funding overview. I'd like to talk a little bit about money on this because, you know, we're a small, what we consider kind of more a rural area. Transportation funding largely at times is awarded and delivered based on population, vehicle volume, and those are two topics that we don't really compete well with. Probably two things that we kind of really enjoy about the area, but can make it a challenge to get funding. So just by looking at these numbers, it's pretty amazing the amount of funds that we are able to invest in our local community when it comes down to transportation improvements, safety improvements in terms of things that are focusing on collision reduction, relieving congestion, complete streets improvements, and improving safety and mobility for all users of the facilities that we manage and operate. So with that, since 2020, we've completed approximately $40 million. And when I'm talking about these costs, these are construction costs. So we've completed approximately $40 million in roadway improvements in the regions that I'm talking about here, Eureka, Arcata area. So that's pretty cool number to look at, and a lot more coming. So in terms of projects that are awarded and ready to construct and going to construction this year, just about $65 million. Did someone say something? I heard someone, okay. Thought I heard someone pipe in. So about $65 million in projects, construction costs. It's about ready to start construction or has started construction this year, just in this smaller region. In terms of projects that are currently in project development and have funding in our program, we're looking at approximately $137 million. And then projects in development, but have not had funding identified. And these would be projects fairly early in the project development phase, looking at what we would call our K phase or project initiation document. The output of that phase is, some of you may know, is like a project study report or a project initiation document. And so there are some projects that we're still seeking funding for. That totals about 61 million. And these totals kind of look at like a horizon year of around 2030 in terms of when these projects may go into construction or be completed. So first one I'll cover here is the Wabash Fairfield Safety Project. This was completed back in 2020. Construction cost of about 2.8 million. We had put in a new traffic signal at Hawthorne, reconfigured the Wabash Fairfield intersection to eliminate one of the directions of travel at the Fairfield leg of that intersection to really make it more of a classic and operate as a four-legged intersection as opposed to a five. And then also perform some work regarding ADA in terms of replacing curb ramps and driveways, and also replacing some sidewalk. Next was the 4th Street Safety Project. That installed and constructed a number of intersection bulb outs to address traffic calming. There was also a 2 to 3 lane conversion from N to B Street, which also included the addition of a bike lane on one side of the facility. Also constructed and upgraded curb ramps and driveways to meet ADA standards. There was a new traffic signal at L Street installed with audible pedestrian signals, a number of drainage improvements, especially there on the I guess beginning part of the project as you're approaching into Eureka from the north. A lot of those areas had some flooding issues that we rectified. We also put in infrastructure for signal interconnect for fiber optic, and a pavement overlay was done as well. Construction cost about 10 million. That was completed just last year. The Broadway ADA project also replaced curb ramps, driveways, bring them up to ADA standards, did a number of sidewalk infill, drainage improvements as well, and converted existing signals with audible pedestrian signals. Construction cost on that one was approximately 5 million, and that was also completed last year. Next was the Broadway mid-block crossing, so the pedestrian activated signal right there near the Broadway Cinema. That was an exciting feature to be added. That was just done recently in late 2022, and that was about a $500,000 project. Next, this one is one of those projects that would qualify as awarded and ready to construct, the Fifth Street / North Broadway Safety Project. In terms of the improvements along Fifth Street, they will be very similar to what you saw happen on 4th Street in terms of bulb outs, replacement of curb ramps, driveways to meet ADA standards, drainage improvements, the audible pedestrian signals being added to the existing signal systems. We'll also be doing a portion of that will include pavement overlay, and then we'll also be installing fiber optic for signal interconnect. This project will actually bring the fiber optic and signal interconnect all the way to the district office on Union Street. And the plan is for that to enter the building for a future traffic management center to allow us to really manage and operate all the signals from the district office. Construction cost on this one, about $13.3 million. We do have a contractor on board on this one, and this one will start here this spring. Next one is the South Broadway Complete Streets. So this one is in development, currently in the environmental phase. This is the one that we're doing the public meeting on this evening. So this one has some pretty exciting improvements that really drop out of the Eureka Broadway multimodal corridor study that was done, I think, back in early 2021. So this one will include pedestrian rails on the Herrick Avenue overcrossing. It'll also include some restriping on that overcrossing to convert that 8-foot shoulder to a more shared use striping for peds and bikes. There will be, throughout the project limits, a Class 4 bikeway, and a Class 4 bikeway is technically defined as a bike lane that has some sort of a physical vertical separation between the travel lane and the bike lane. So between the outside travel lane and the bike lane, there will be a 3-foot wide buffer that will be striped out. And then in the middle of that, we'll have some type of flexible bollard or channelizer that will sit in that area. So while it's not a hard barrier that would prevent a vehicle, it is flexible in nature, but nonetheless, significant enhancement throughout this stretch of Broadway, which is currently, not well designed for active transportation. So we're really looking forward to this project changing that. We'll also be including enhanced bike and pedestrian intersection markings at all the intersections. This will also be occurring at all the driveways, really to highlight where peds and bikes are traveling and should be using, in terms of making those movements, both to educate those users on where they should be and also allowing the drivers to see where those users are going to be and to look out for them. There'll also be a traffic signal at Hillficker Lane. That'll be a new traffic signal, which will add crossing opportunities between now what is a pretty large stretch between formal crossing opportunities on Broadway for peds and bikes. There will be the addition of 2 new bus stops, one by Pearson's and one by Tetralt Tire in the other direction. And then we are relocating 2 bus stops by McCullen's, and those will be moved near the South Bayshore Mall entrance. And those will be formal bus stops where the bus will be able to turn outside of the number 2 lane and stop outside of traffic in the shoulder. Construction cost on this one's about $7 million, and we will target it to begin construction in 2025. This one is funded and programmed, so that is good news. And next, I'm going to share a QR code. So if you want, and you want to save this, you can throw up your camera on this QR code right now, and it should prompt a little link that you can click on. That will take you to the project webpage. There, you'll see a link that you can join the public meeting tonight at 5:30. And also, if you're unable to attend, we will have a recording posted on that webpage. So I'd look out for that in the next couple days, and you'll see a link to the recording as well. There's also a lot of information. I believe we'll have our layouts on there and a copy of the slides from tonight's public meeting. So everything I just mentioned, plus some more on there as well. Next one is the Middle Broadway Complete Streets project. This one was a project that we were looking at, actually a couplet, extending the couplet around Broadway. But one of the alternatives that we were really looking at developing, and one of the goals we were trying to develop, was something that was more programmable, that could happen more in the near term, and something that was more fundable and doable, both from a funding perspective, but also from a permitting and environmental impact perspective. So some of you may have been part of that project development team, because we had some stakeholders involved in that. And looking at a couplet that goes around, like behind Harbor Lanes through wetlands, was going to be quite a challenge, and take quite a lot of time and expense. So this is an alternative that's part of that project. While it's not funded, it is seeking funding. It would more or less be an extension of the South Broadway Complete Streets project, with the inclusion of the Class 4 bikeways, including the buffer and the channelizers in that area, the enhanced ped and bike intersection markings, as well as at driveways. It would include potentially a pedestrian activated signal south of Hawthorne. It would also include sidewalk infill for a very large stretch in the northbound direction between the Bayshore Mall and just north of Vigo, where we don't have sidewalk today. This one is estimated to cost about $26 million, so definitely a bigger lift than the previous ones. We're targeting to complete the project initiation report just next month, and then the effort after that will then be to try to secure funding for it. So I don't have any further updates on that, but as they come available, we'll be sure to update Beth, and maybe come back to the board and to the TAC to give up further updates on this one. The next one is the Broadway Complete Streets Shared Path. So this project was formerly part of the South Broadway Complete Streets project, one we're doing the public meeting on tonight. This one has quite a significant amount of wetland impact as part of it, a little bit more challenging from a permitting perspective. So the decision was made so as to not hold up the South Broadway Complete Streets schedule. This one has a longer time frame for delivery. We decided to break this one out standalone, so that that project could move along and not be delayed and get delivered sooner, and then break this one out as a separate project that we could develop on its own. So this has been initiated. It is still seeking funding. The construction cost on this one's approximately $3 million, and we are targeting completion of the project initiation report in May of 23. Next one is the Coster couplet. So we formerly had prepared a PID, a project initiation report, looking at what's called a Coster couplet, extending 4th Street through the balloon track and then on to Coster, essentially to extend the 4th and 5th Street couplet kind of scenario and treatment there in Eureka, between Broadway and Coster. That particular alternative going through the balloon track has its challenges, significant challenges, especially with regards to the hazardous waste cleanup that would likely be required in the balloon track. So our department recently embarked on kind of reopening that project and adding an alternative to it. And so this, what we're calling an interim alternative, would, instead of going and extending 4th Street through the balloon track, it would essentially have 4th Street extend. You'd still make that sharp left onto Broadway, but then as you approach Washington, at Washington Street, southbound traffic would make a right onto Washington, and then once that traffic reaches Coster, they would make a left. So essentially you would make a couplet between Washington and Coster Street. So while not the same and maybe as desired as the balloon track, but nonetheless would allow us to provide quite a substantial cross-section that would serve peds, bikes, all users on Broadway through a section that does not have any shoulders today. So this would be a really big improvement for that stretch of Broadway. As I mentioned here, I'm just looking at my bullets now, converting Broadway north of Del Norte to northbound 101 only, and then converting Coster and West Washington to southbound 101 only. would include class 4 bikeways similar to the previous two projects I mentioned with the buffer and the channelizers. It would also include a transit only lane, have new and infill for sidewalk, and then ADA upgrades in terms of just upgrading curb ramps and driveways to meet current ADA standards. This one has a approximate construction cost of 32 million. And this one, we are planning to complete the project initiation report also next month and is seeking funding. So those are the projects in a downtown, just Eureka, urban part of Eureka. And then I wanted to kind of split off and give a little update on the Eureka Arcata corridor projects just to the north. So most all of these projects, most of the ones considered the Eureka Arcata corridor projects are complete. We completed, let's see here, the Excel Decel Lane project. Let me actually go 2 slides here. Okay, I'm actually reverse how I'm going to say this. So I'm going to start with what's not complete yet. Indianola undercrossing and half signal. So this one will construct 101 going over Indianola and also eliminating all of the at-grade crossings at Bayside, Breakcut, the Mid-City, Harper Ford intersection, and then installing a half signal at Airport Road. We'll also include a connection to the Bay Trail at Indianola Cutoff. Happy to announce this project started construction just last week on Wednesday with tree removal and tree trimming. We will see a brief pause in work after the tree work is done, and the bulk of the construction will not begin again until spring, early summer. But nonetheless, it looks much different out there with the tree work that's occurred if you've driven through there lately. Construction cost on this one is just over 51 million. And as I mentioned, we just started it. One of the other projects in the corridor that's now complete was the acceleration deceleration lane project, where we extended and lengthened a number of the Excel decel lanes at all of the sites mentioned there in the parentheses. Construction cost on this one was 7.3 million and was completed in 2021. Next one is the high tension cable median barrier project. This one was about 5.3 million, also completed this one in 2021, included high tension cable barrier just north of Gannon Slough Bridge, and then a couple stretches north and south of Airport Road. Next one is the bridge and rail replacement project. This one, we replaced the rails in the northbound direction at Jacoby Creek and Gannon Slough bridges, and I apologize for the typo there on Gannon Slough. That should say northbound. In terms of bridge replacement, we replaced the southbound Jacoby Creek Bridge. And for those of you that were following this project, pretty cool construction method that was used on this one that we call accelerated bridge construction, where we actually constructed the replacement bridge in the median while traffic was on the existing bridge, and then we detoured traffic onto the new bridge. If you remember doing the little S curve there as you were going southbound entering the corridor, and then in one night we through some fancy techniques by a contractor lifted that bridge up and slid it into place in a number of hours, and by morning time when everyone woke up, everyone was going straight again. So that was a very innovative and cool way to really keep 101 functioning, also in minimizing our environmental impacts. That one costed about 9.1 million and was completed just last year. And next one, this one's probably the local project that's about to take the spotlight away from the Indianola project once that one gets built and going. And this is our Eureka Slough Bridges replacement project. So this one is actually currently on the agenda for the March CTC meeting to be programmed for a construction cost of $130 million. So we are proposing to replace both those bridges, both north and southbound. There will be a separated pedestrian cyclist path included both in the north and southbound directions on the structure. and will also include connections to the Bay Trail. So in the interim, Bay Trail South at Humboldt County is planning to get into construction this year. We'll currently go over the old railroad trestle. With the construction of this project, the trail would be rerouted to go over Eureka Slough bridges and connect to that. We'll also include connections to the trail at all the quadrants because the city of Eureka has trail network coming up from the south heading north. So we're also planning to essentially, no matter what direction you're coming from, whether you're on the highway, you're on the trail, being able to access all of those movements and have access to that trail. As I mentioned, construction cost on this is about 130 million. We have a target completion for project approval and environmental document in July of 2026. And the target year for construction is 2029. With that, we can take any questions.
That's a lot of information. I appreciate that. Does anyone have any? Yes, Supervisor Madrone.
Oh, thank you for that presentation, and I'm so excited to see the Eureka Slough bridges actually already on the STIP, I'm assuming, and moving forward by 2029. That's fantastic. At that point, we'll be able to remove the flanges on the Eureka Slough bridges, the railroad bridge, and then we can have rail bikes as well, running on the rail. So that's fantastic. When you're doing projects, have there been any thoughts about, like when you're removing large trees, like those, what are they, Monterey cypress, I believe, there at Indianola Cutoff. It'd be nice to integrate the use of that large wood into stream restoration projects. It's not always possible to coordinate all of that, but whenever possible, maybe they can be stockpiled, and then nonprofits working with agencies to do large woody debris placement in streams for salmon could make use of that material. I was thinking up on the Mad River, they just had a brand new project done up there that already got completed before this happened. But just put that in your notes that if there's ever a possibility of integrating the use of those materials, that would be fantastic. But other than that, great job. Lots of wonderful projects happening. Thank you.
Yeah, and to respond to that, Steve, on the large woody debris topic, I know with the mitigation project for the corridor projects, we had a large-scale off-site wetland creation project off Highway 255. We actually used woody debris on that, and we had to do some tree removal as part of another project, and we did coordinate to bring that material over to that site and stockpile it there, and then ended up using it as part of that habitat work. And I know, we have other projects that do this, like we just delivered a project, not yet in construction, but our Elk Creek bridge replacement project in Mendocino on Highway 1. We're doing a root wad revetment and armoring the bank with a number of root wads. And so I do know that we're often looking for things like that. And the nice thing is that, our projects often unfortunately require that type of work, but the nice thing is that we can then use those things for the exact purpose and reasons that you stated. So I know we are always looking for that opportunity. I'm not aware if the trees being taken currently at Indianola are being used for that purpose. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a note here just to bring that up with our teams to be sure they're thinking about that. Because sometimes, while it might be obvious, especially when it's in our back door, we might not always be thinking about that. And I do think there's a good opportunity there. So I'm going to bring that up. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And through the chair. You might want to develop a list. I know you probably already know this, but first of all, kudos on those integrations you've already done. But the list wouldn't be very large of the agencies and or nonprofits that engage in this kind of work. Maybe there's 6 to 7 or so. And so it might just be possible that, when you're seeing something come up like this, make a call ahead of time and see where you can integrate. But great work on the integration that you are doing. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any Mayor Burgell?
Thank you. Thanks for that great presentation. I can't see you now, but that's all right. So that was a lot of great information. I was curious on Broadway. I didn't see or hear of any lighting changes. So is there going to be any mitigation for lighting?
Yeah, actually, Thanks for bringing that up, and you are correct that was not on any of the slides. I do know on the South Broadway complete streets, lighting is something that is a current conversation on that project in terms of the scope of work, and so we are currently having conversations about that. One of the challenges with the lighting topic at times is Caltrans typically does not install and operate the lighting and maintaining it when it goes through an urban like downtown. So we need to have further conversations with the city, but we're hopeful that we're going to be able to add lighting into the South Broadway Complete Streets project and work out some type of agreement between Caltrans and the city, so similar to some of the other agreements we have going through Eureka, so that we can add lighting, bring more visibility to peds and bikes for vehicles. So that's definitely a topic that we are currently working on that project specifically.
Great. My concern too was, mid-Broadway, the lighting there. So as you're like going across from Bayshore Mall, like say from Harris to Hawthorne, not all the way to Hawthorne, but that lighting, there's really not a lot. We have a lot of people that get hit down there. And so I think lighting might be something that we should be having a conversation about as well.
Yeah, and I would say that the South Broadway Complete Streets project is the furthest along. It is the only one of those projects through the stretches that has funding. And so I'm going to lend a guess that based on what happens with the South Broadway Complete Streets and the arrangements and agreements that are made on lighting there, since those other projects are more of an extension of what we're doing on the South Broadway project, I would imagine that trend would continue, or that would be a goal to continue it through those other stretches with the other projects that have not currently identified funding yet.
Okay. And then secondly, do you have any data on the usage of those new crosswalks that you could send me on Hawthorne and near Broadway Cinema? Are people using those crosswalks?
I currently don't, but I can ask to see if we do have any data.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And Mayor Jones.
Hi, Mayor of Blue Lake, Adeline Jones here, and I add my thanks to your presentation. As long as I have you here, I'm curious to know if there's any plans of soon to change the signage through Arcadis to say Cal Poly Humboldt instead of Humboldt State University. We are now at Cal Poly Humboldt, and it's still saying California State University on all of the signage, and I was wondering if there was any plans to get that updated.
Yeah, I am not certain of that, but I can definitely ask the question and I will get a response on that, and I'll probably just forward that to Beth and she can forward it on to the board. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I have one. Sorry, I'm not sure if you can see my hand, so I figured
Yes.
I'd just type up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I had I'm excited to see the South Broadway piece moving forward. And, I know in the original study, the multimodal corridor plan, I do recall that the southern portion, I thought it actually ended earlier, but it looks like from the website, the South Broadway project website, it's saying that it'll be the southern entrance of the mall. Is that Truesdale? Is that where that will end?
I'm unmuted. Okay. The project does extend all the way to the South Broadway Mall entrance. So, just to right there to the McDonald's intersection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
then
that's actually where the bus stops currently at McCullen's are being moved there. So that's extending the project up to that point, as well as the Class 4 bike lane will be extending all the way up to that intersection as well.
Great. Is there any possibility of advancing the Class 4 bike lane component of the project more quickly than 2025? I know that there's multiple aspects of this project, but I'm curious if that's feasible.
Yeah, I'm going to say no for these reasons. That's just the that's the timeline to really develop the project. So I think we'd like for it to go sooner, but if we were to say we were to break that scope out, we'd still need to go and do our environmental document. We'd still need to go put a plan package together. So really that date is based on the time to deliver that project with the permitting. I guess you could say that you don't need right away um, to do the bikeway, but essentially that is where the funding for that project sits and is allocated when you look at kind of all the projects within our portfolio of projects. So honestly, you could deliver just that component sooner. There just isn't the funding to do it any sooner is probably the best answer for that.
Okay, and this is the last part of my multi-part question. When it comes to the, the Class 4 bikeway, what I recall was that there was going to be a pilot or a demonstration project, and I'm sorry, I didn't hear if you touched on that in your presentation, but I don't know where that stands because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up. So that is our Broadway pop-ups demonstration. That was supposed to occur late last year. The contractor that we have slated to do that, unfortunately, was not able to do it in the time frame we needed them to. So we elected to push that off to later this spring for the sole purpose that we didn't feel installing those temporary ped and bike, largely are for peds and bikes, which we would expect those uses to be decreased during the winter, just with the weather and the rain. So we felt like if we went and did it in the winter now, we wouldn't get the data we wanted to get from that. So we elected to push that off until the weather improved. So we do still have a plan to do that. And that largely also comes into kind of informing our South Broadway Complete Streets project, because we're planning on testing like a certain bollard and channelizer with that Class 4 bikeway. And that'll help us, with kind of product selection for that project in terms of what ultimately gets installed. So we are still planning to do that. The Class 4 bikeway, I believe, in that demonstration would be between Wabash and Hawthorne in both directions. But I would probably look out for that in the next 2 to 3 months. But I expect that we'll also provide updates on when to expect that to the board and to the public and at large.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Debbie, I think we have someone online with their hand up.
We do. Latonya, you can go ahead.
Hi, my comments or my questions are pertaining to the bus stops. I noticed that you said something about there being a bus stop being added at Pearson. And I'm just wondering, are they going to be bringing back some of the bus stops, like the one in front of near Walgreens, Eureka Natural Foods, near there, and near Comfort Inn? I'm just wondering if they're going to be bringing. Those are just a couple, but I myself am saying they need to bring back the bus stops.
So you're saying
on Broadway.
So you're saying, Latanya, that there were bus stops there previously that are no longer there.
That's right. I don't know if they I haven't seen them. I haven't been there, but I don't know if they're still. Did they bring them back?
Yeah, so that would likely be, well, that would be a Humboldt Transit Authority decision, or that's their work in terms of really adding or I guess removing bus stops. So we wouldn't really get involved in that. In terms of our projects, we do partner with them to try to find additional bus stop opportunities, or also relocating them in our projects, because oftentimes they need certain improvements. We need to widen an area, for the sidewalk per se, so that the bus can move out of the traveled way and into the shoulder. So in terms of locations you're talking about, I don't know that we've had any involvement if they did go away, but we do partner with them regularly. So I'm happy to contact Greg Pratt, who's their director at Humboldt Transit Authority, and ask about those two particular ones. So I have here at Walgreens and Comfort Inn to see if there's any plans to bring those back, or what the details around that were. I will send, I don't know what the best way is to get that information back to you. Beth, is it possible to give that response to you? And
that would be fine. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, you can send that my way.
So I'll look into that, LaTanya.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And any of our board members, PAC members online? Looks like no other questions and comments. I know that we in Fortuna installed a number of solar street lights along 12th Street when we did the undergrounding project. They saved a lot of money and ease of installation when we did the undergrounding project, and the cost of running power to each one of those lights was prohibitive. But solar, they've performed well. During the earthquake, when the power went out, was the only street lights in the Eel River Valley, I believe. So they did work as intended, and they will burn all night. We actually bought one early and put it in the dog park and used it as a test just to see if it would burn through the winter nights, and it does. So that's one thing to look at.
If I may ask, are these high level street level lighting or more low scale like pedestrian level lighting?
They are street level lighting with a you can get them in the standard light distribution patterns, various sizes of poles. You can spec them with different panels and different batteries. So they are highly
They've come a long way.
yeah.
Well, thanks for that.
Thank you.
I think we'll probably explore that as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for all the information, and look forward to seeing how things play out. It's a very good project and looks for traffic safety oriented and complete streets. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, everybody.
And with that, we will look next to a presentation from our executive director on the 2022 year-end report.
Thank you. I'll pull up my presentation. Just 1 minute. All right. Well, first off, I'd like to say welcome to the new board members. I hope that this report provides a good overview of what we've been up to in the last year and gets you up to speed. I did appreciate having the opportunity to do an onboarding orientation with many of the board members, so I know they're picking up on everything rapidly. This presentation is going to kind of highlight some of the things that were included in the infographic that was in your staff report. Very similar style to what we did last year. Tried to keep it sort of simple and fun to look at, and give you the highlights. And I will share some of those same things here and a couple of other details. So first off, I just really want to thank the HCOG team. We are small. There are not many of us, but we get a lot accomplished, and I really am so appreciative. I feel like we have exceptional staff, and it really keeps everything moving. So huge thanks to all the HCOG staff, and also for making work fun, which they do. So big picture things to talk about. Last year in total, $10.4 million was distributed to transit and jurisdictions through HCOG. So those were all through the resolutions that our board adopted. We'll talk a little bit more about where that landed, but that's a large sum of money. So I know you all come to these meetings every month, and we are getting things accomplished, and we are getting money out to where it should go. We did adopt the regional transportation plan. That was at our very first meeting of 2022. So it was really the years before that the work went in, but we got to adopt it, and we have begun implementation of that plan. In 2021, we adopted the SAFE strategic plan, and this year we've been implementing that plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the pavement management plan has just been completed, really kind of wrapping up in December with the last few reports trailing in. And these are the management plans that go out to each jurisdiction, detailing all their pavement condition, and really help as a budgeting tool for your public works officials to understand their pavement condition and the the cost that would be involved in bringing it up to a better condition. It's a very helpful budgeting tool, and also has a software component of it. So we get reports, which I will share with each board member once they're finalized. And then we also, the staff from each jurisdiction learns to use this software. There's a training that goes with that, which they just completed. So, our biggest, our biggest distributions go to our transit agencies, and the slide here is showing you the breakdown of which transit agencies are receiving which percent of those funds. So this last year, through the various funding sources that are detailed in the infographic, such as local transportation fund and state transit assistance, that $7.4 million made it out to these transit agencies. They use them for a variety of purposes, things like new buses, maintenance, operations, a wide variety. Sometimes they use them to implement free fare programs. Each funding source kind of has a different set of allowances in terms of what can be funded, but all of it is highly utilized. I want to talk a little bit about transit. It'll be a focus of ours going into 2023 for this year and beyond. This slide is really meant to help kind of frame the picture of why it's so important that we really focus on bringing the ridership back up. So we're marking the trends here from all the way back in 2007 to current, and you see we kind of had stability. A lot of the fluctuations prior to 2020 really kind of mimicked what was happening at the university in terms of peak enrollment and then enrollment dropping. So you see some of those parallels when we look at this data along with other criteria. But what you see really in 2020 is this very precipitous decline. Of course, with COVID, we were not encouraging bus ridership unless it was absolutely essential, and so back in 2021, it kind of starts creeping back up again. But you see that we are still hundreds of thousands of trips down from where we started. And for us to accomplish our goals in the regional transportation plan, particularly those that we've outlined in the safe and sustainable transportation targets, and accomplish that mode shift and get more people on transit, we're going to be very focused on working with HTA to promote ridership and look at adding those services and convenience. And we'll do that through the grant that they received, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but also through helping them with additional grants and marketing. So we did support Humboldt Transit Authority in 2022 with their TRISIP grant application. This was a winning grant application that awarded them $38 million. The general scope is that they will build an intermodal center known as the Earth Center that'll go in the parking lot that's behind Lost Coast Brewery. And then there's also the purchase of 11 hydrogen buses and a hydrogen fueling station at the HTA maintenance yard. And in addition to that, there's new routes, such as an express route from Eureka to Ukiah. So our role in this grant coming up, so we're just getting the contracts in order to formally provide the grant support that we outlined and your board voted on when we went as a partner to the grant application. But we'll be assisting with grant management and reporting, and we will also be the lead on the community and stakeholder outreach. This fiscal year, we'll be developing a community participation plan and really working to figure out how to promote that increased transit ridership. We're also, separate from that grant, working on branding support. This was kind of an older outcome of a previous, I think it might have been out of a prior transit development plan update, but really looking at unifying the branding through all the transit programs throughout the county to kind of give an overall sense of continuity and just ease of use. And so people kind of understand, yes, I'm getting on a local bus. So we are just starting meetings with HTA and others about how to implement that branding suggestion if there's a desire to do that. So also in 2022, we launched plans that are still being worked on now. They'll be completed this year. One is the Transit Development Plan update that is updated every 5 years. So we're working on that now. There's also a triennial performance audit that is also being conducted now and will and started in 2022. And then every year we do the fiscal compliance audit, and the on-met transit needs is kind of just keeps going. As soon as we finish them, we start them right up again. So more to come on the next round of those, but yeah, those were completed. And then we also in December of last year updated the Transportation Development Act rules that we have here at HCOG. So that concludes the transit portion. Distributions to local jurisdictions for streets and roads. 2.3 million of HCOG funds went there. This is primarily RSTP funds and local transportation funds that aren't put towards transit. So you can see the breakdown of that 2.3 million. It does, generally follow population. However, you see, for example, Arcata and Eureka, even though they have large populations, they received very little for their streets and roads. And that's because their money is primarily coming through the local transportation fund, and it has to fund their transit activities first. And because they have transit systems, they're putting a lot of those funds to keep those going. So it's really just a little bit left that's coming towards streets and roads to augment those budgets. So we talked about, VROOM, the regional transportation plan. It was adopted in January after, a years-long kind of public process. So that was exciting. And as we work towards implementation, these are some of the activities that really are supported by the objectives that are found in that regional transportation plan. We do Bike Month every year. That's happening in May. It'll happen again this May. We this year did a trail safety working group. It kind of started as an e-bike working group. And if some of you were here, you remember it came to the board just as a discussion item. There were representatives from many jurisdictions on that, even beyond just those that have the Hammond Trail or the Bay Trail. And this is really the sign you see here on the slide was one of the outcomes, and these will be posted on the various sort of commuter trails throughout. And the concerns we were hearing was that with e-bikes becoming more prominent users of the trails, there was just starting to be a lot of conflict. So this committee got together, they worked on the best solutions to that, and their initial take is to not go with any kind of firm enforcement route, but really just kind of help with education in terms of how to be courteous when using the trail. So there's a series of signs similar to that will be put up. Those were funded through the 2% Bike and Ped program that we have in terms of coming up with the designs and then actually installing them. We also continue to participate, our senior planner, specifically Una, she participates in Safe Routes to School, the task force that's ongoing. And then we are the administrators for the Humboldt Bay Trail Funds Committee. So we continue to support that committee with solicitations for grants every year. And then when the grants are awarded, we process all those invoices and the money flows through the Humboldt Area Foundation. In terms of safety, we continue to convene the Greater Eureka Area Traffic Safety Task Force that former Mayor Susan Seaman had started, and we continue that. The outcome of that was the Go Slow, Watch the Road campaign. We've had some successes with that campaign, but as you'll hear as my presentations go on tonight, safety continues to be a huge focus of ours and a huge need. So we're delighted to see all of the signs, and they really are throughout the county. I was in Shelter Cove a few months ago, and they made it out there. So it's really nice to see, I kind of think of every person who put a sign in their yard as a potential ally for us to think about, those are people in our community who are concerned about safety, and there's a lot of those signs out. So that's encouraging, but we still have a whole lot of work to do. So we will be continuing to look for ways to be productive in that realm. And we did, as most, I think all jurisdictions did last year, adopted that regional commitment to achieving zero traffic deaths. So also in terms of VROOM implementation, if you'll remember, equity and relationship building was a big component of that. You'll see on the agendas now, we do have the land acknowledgement, which was drafted with the help of local tribal historic preservation officers. Our staff has been attending a sort of all year long program that meets once every other month or so, which is a CalCog equity training specifically for regional governments. We did host an accessible public meetings training actually here in this room, and that was put on by a local consultant, Peggy Martinez, which was useful. And another great outcome of that is that we were able to recommend Peggy to the California Transportation Commission statewide committee on equity, and she was accepted into that. So she is now a member. So that's wonderful to have representation at the state level. And then we also joined the Core Hub Community Benefits Network for offshore wind. And then we have the safe and sustainable transportation targets that are in our regional transportation plan. And so we have been working, there's some zero emission vehicle targets within that. And towards that, we've been attending these transportation roundtables, which are a group primarily made up, RCEA leads that group. So we're really working with them to look for mutual opportunities on how to advance the charging network. And others attend, Humboldt Transit Authority and folks from Shots Energy. And there's probably a few I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head, but it's a wonderful network to kind of keep that conversation going and look for ways we can mutually benefit each other in our goals. There's also the North State Zero Emission Vehicle Working Group, which Stevie Luther, our associate planner, has been attending regularly. Greg Pratt from HTA is very active in that group and really looks at building out that regional network so that, you know, we're not isolated. And as we travel from here, we have those opportunities for zero emission vehicles to function. And then we are currently working on, and have since last year been working on, a grant application, Caltrans Sustainable Communities Planning Grant application for a level of traffic stress analysis. This was a goal or a performance measure in the safe and sustainable transportation targets. We were to complete a low traffic stress and connectivity analysis of the bike and pedestrian network for the greater Humboldt Bay area, and have that really done coming up here in the next fiscal year. So we are writing a grant for that. And what the low traffic stress analysis does is it really evaluates kind of street for street the adequacy or the stress level of being a bicycle and pedestrian in those areas. So we can really have a good picture of where we have excellent facilities and those that are really constrained and not, you know, that you would not feel comfortable to walk out in those areas. And with that, we can overlay those with all kinds of other interesting information like destinations, equity features such as, you know, income levels of census tract, and really hone in on where would our investment best be next if we were going to make it more, add to the connectivity so that those bike and ped networks would be more usable and create better connectivity to get around with a low level of stress, so that even, you know, parents with children feel comfortable being pedestrians or cyclists in those areas. The grant has more than just that aspect. That is one large component. The grant will also explore local sources for permanent funding for a safe routes to school coordinator. This is something that's been on and off. Basically, it's a task force that's been in the works for a number of years, and they've been meeting, but it's very grant dependent. And so it ebbs and flows in terms of the funding and who has a grant that really supports that position. And so I think sometimes public health leads it, sometimes HCOG's led it, RCAA has been leading it for a while. But again, once those funds dry up, then it sort of falls flat until the next grant helps pick up the ball. So we're looking to see if there's a feasible way to fund a position that could really be dedicated to working with schools and looking at those safe routes and pursuing those projects. The final part of that grant application is bringing national experts to our area to do charrette style trainings with, you know, on specific locations, and work with communities and decision makers about how to kind of think of smart growth policies or principles for those specific areas. So really a chance for us to fund having some highly acclaimed folks, you know, show up in our neighborhood and do some good work. And we are working closely with the TAC on all of those items and seeing which jurisdictions are interested in participating. SAFE, our the Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies. As I mentioned, we implemented our strategic plan in 2022. So the ADA improvements for 61 call boxes has been completed, and we have submitted our encroachment permit for the new call boxes. The CHP continues to patrol, highways 96 and 36. And we haven't had any luck with Eureka. Excuse me. So we continue to work on our REAP application. So in 2022, we began distributing the $196,000 to jurisdictions for individual projects. And the artists are working on creating their multimedia catalog to increase community discourse on housing. Those artist projects are expected to be finished in the next few months. So we'll have more information about like a media packet and where, we're trying to disseminate those projects and information about where they can be viewed to as many people as possible. So we'll be in touch about that. And we also the REAP project sponsored a housing roundtable, and we'll follow up with an outreach campaign from that effort. And then we also submitted a REAP 2.0 grant, and that was back in December. Remember, for those of you that were here, we came to the board on that, and that was for funding for a pilot of a microtransit system in McKinleyville, as well as pre-development funding for an infill housing project in McKinleyville. And then you just heard a lot from Jeff about this, so I don't want to belabor it, but it is very exciting that the Indianola project was awarded and is going to begin construction. We were kind of a nail biter all through 2022 if it was going to, need to dip back into our regional funds for that. I think over the course of this project, HCOG has, through our regional transportation improvement funds, we've dedicated over the course of 20 years or so, $20 million. It's the biggest investment HCOG has ever made. So it's great to see that coming to construction. Also really wonderful that we didn't get hit with additional millions requested. So that, again, nail biter throughout 2022 on that one, but we're in the clear at least for now. And that's going to conclude my report. Just really looking forward to a productive 2023, and very much welcome the new board members, and excited to get everybody up to speed and for the next projects we're taking on in the new year.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions? Yes, Supervisor Madrone.
Thank you, Chair. So the grant for the Mobility on Demand Transit in McKinleyville, that's part of the same grant as the We Are Up housing project. And you'll know about that when? Does it take like
They
a
did
year?
not give us an exact time when we would know. We are expecting in the next couple of months. We think March or April, just based on kind of when some other timelines that they did publish, but they didn't give us a date of when they'd be letting people know.
And so if it were approved, then it might still be a number of months before things might be implemented. So when constituents are calling me wondering when this mobility on demand will start up, perhaps in a year or so, if the funding is approved. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I think that's a safe timeline. I think what they can look forward, of course, before it starts up is we want to do, quite a considerable amount of public outreach on that and make sure that we're developing in such a way that it will be highly used. So I think, assuming we could get awarded, that would be a great next thing to look forward to, is just how they can be involved. And I would absolutely love to hear that constituents were very excited to get on the microtransit system.
Well, they are, and they're contacting me pretty regularly.
That's wonderful.
And then, of course, the other way that could be funded is through the allocation of funding for transit every year. Occasionally, there is some funds left over that we as a board of supervisors make some decisions about. That is certainly another place where that might fit in. But I know we also are getting the Willow Creek up to Hoopa and Witchpeck line back and running, working with the tribes out there and stuff. That's a separate project under HTA, I believe. So.
Yes. So I think what you're talking, probably it's the local transportation fund. So we meet all the known transit needs, and the county spends a good portion of their local transportation funds on their transit system. And I believe it is the county that will contract with the tribes. That part of their funding is going to that. And the rest of it goes to HTA to manage the system. And specifically for the tribes, it's that Hoopa to Willow Creek to Witchpeck route that was formerly run by KTNet, which was a nonprofit, and the county contracted with KTNet to run that service. It ended with COVID, and we've been working really hard since then to resume it. We know there's a huge need. Even when we were doing our outreach for the regional transportation plan and we went to Hoopa, it was missed for sure. So we're excited to see that that's coming back online. Certainly with the local transportation funds that are put towards, that aren't put towards transit, that go back to the jurisdictions, they can absolutely be allocated to transit, even if it's not an official on-met need. They can also go specifically to bike and pedestrian projects or to augment streets and roads. So those are decisions that each jurisdiction makes with those funds that are not specified for the specific, identified transit needs.
Thank you.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Thank you. I just wanted to express my appreciation and support for a couple of things that were discussed. Just in continuing to work and make safety a priority for bikes and pedestrians. I know that's been a huge concern in Arcata. I'm guessing probably all of our communities. It seems to be a top concern. So that kind of says something if we've got a theme going there. So thank you. And also, I do appreciate the being more active in the housing roles, and as in, the sponsoring of the housing roundtable and moving forward with some of the promotion of housing related activities. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other members online? Okay. Well, thank you. It's been a busy year. It's going to be a busy year coming up, and we appreciate everything that HCOG staff and you do. So thank you. And with that, we come to public comment for non-agenda items. And I don't know if there's any.
I don't see any.
Okay, well, with that, we'll close public comment and move to the consent calendar.
Hope we do have a raised
Oh,
hand.
I wasn't up a second ago. Shock.
Hi, I just wanted to say about the lighting and the busing for the Eureka, Fortuna, and McKinney, just the busing in general. Can you extend the hours? And because I know the Eureka City Bus doesn't run after a certain hour. I'm just wondering, can you extend the hours? And as far as customer service goes, have customer service open as long as the buses are on the road. Yes, because chances are something happens after customer service closes. When there has to be a way in case a rider who needs to get some help with the buses have a way to get in touch with customer service. I know this is something for the HTA, but I just thought I'd put that out there for you because it's so important. I think the transit system that's in place in Eureka is so great, and I think it would be just a little tweaking to help make it a good for everyone.
Okay, thank you. And you probably be well served to get a hold of the transit agencies themselves. They can more direct attention to your question and needs there. Thank you. And I don't see any others. So now we will move to the consent calendar. I would say that item D was removed from the agenda at this time. And so we have the Assembly Bill 361 findings for the last time, the meeting record, the 23-24 Transportation Development Act, Local Transportation Fund apportionments. Anybody want to pull anything?
I would move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the consent calendar. We get a roll call.
Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Mayor Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Burgell,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Yes.
Councilmember West,
Yes.
Chair Johnson,
Yes.
PAC Member Arroyo,
Yes.
PAC Member Allstrand.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
And thank you. Now we'll come to our action items. Our 23-24 overall work plan and budget. I believe Executive Director Burks is that.
Yes, thank you. I'm up again.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, item 5D, was that pulled for a future meeting?
I can.
I'll let Executive Director
Or
Burks.
was it just pulled from consent for discussion?
It's not pulled from consent for discussion and not exactly an immediate future meeting, we were planning on going for a RAISE grant that really was a planning study to kind of look at big picture. How would we actually achieve, what would it take in terms of programs to reach the vehicle miles traveled reductions we want to see that we've outlined in the safe and sustainable transportation targets? When we went recently to the North Coast Tribal Transportation Commission, we realized that there's a number of tribal projects from our area that are being proposed. Specifically, the Karuk tribe is proposing a multimodal project in both Orleans and Wairika, and it's in Del Norte County, but the Elk Valley Rancheria is applying again for a project that they've applied to before for RAISE, which is multimodal for what is their main street, where they have a lot of safety concerns. And then I didn't catch it. The Yurok tribe also has an application in, but didn't state what the project was. With the RAISE funding, they do seek kind of a geographic distribution of projects each cycle. It'd be very unlikely for multiple projects from our geographic region to be funded. So we wanted to step back to elevate those projects. We think also that our project may benefit as the regional climate action plan gets further along. There'll be a lot of nexus there in terms of the goals that are outlined in that climate action plan and what we're trying to look at with this study. And we think it'll be a more powerful application if that climate plan is adopted, and we can kind of bring some jurisdictions along with us and show their level of interest. So I think it's just, we were a little premature. We got excited. There's so much funding going around right now, but I think it'll be a little more ripe in the coming years. So we want to pause on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so this presentation is about our upcoming, not up. Oh, sorry. Okay, every time we gotta flip through them. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. All right, so now we're on to, if you can believe it, the 23-24 OWPM budget. These things seems like they just, keep flying by here. So I want to walk through you received the staff report. I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the items from that staff report and discuss our approach. So overall, our budget proposed for fiscal year 23-24 is $1,973,000. This is about a $600,000 decrease from our current fiscal year. The big differences were that last year we had some of that CURSA funding that was like the one-time funding that was coronavirus response and relief act money that was coming through HCOG. We used those funds, and we are done with that program. The other areas where we had, if you might remember, we asked for $100,000 extra in local transportation, the administration portion of that, and that was used to pay down our unfunded accrued liability for PERS. So we're in really good shape on that now, and that was a great situation because it was actually the estimates that came in, our allocations were over that, so it didn't damage anybody's allotments that they had been expecting. So that was good. So those are kind of the big areas where we see those revenue differences, and the other differences is in the amount of the REAP grant. So with REAP, last year we had more revenues expected from that, so we're just kind of a different amount this year that we're working through. But overall, largely the same, and not concerned about the revenues and the expenditures. Work element highlights, all of the work elements that are in there are extremely important, especially the things related to Transportation Development Act. I mean, that is the core of what HCOG needs to accomplish, is getting those funds out to our transit agencies and our jurisdictions. But it is very, we do those tasks every year. They're part of our core work functions. But I wanted to highlight just some of the, new things we'll be working on. And some of this we talked about in the prior presentation. But for SAFE, for the call box program, we are going to be installing the new call boxes. There's, I think, 23 of them, primarily on Highway 36 and 96. We've worked through the locations. We have our encroachment permits submitted. And once that gets approved by Caltrans, we'll be able to start construction on those. Planning and programming, coming up this next fiscal year, it's already time to do the STIP again. So we did this last in 2021. We do it every odd year. So we'll get the information from the state starting about June in terms of, the amount that we have for regional funds. And then we'll do a call for projects through the TAC and look at, we'll go through the normal process. And so we will be looking forward to bringing that forward this coming fiscal year. Overhead costs, the highlight there is just the staff transition planning that we are actively in. It will start this fiscal year and carry over. We only have Debbie for another few months, and that's going to be, it's taking some we will beyond miss her for one, but really just a lot of thinking through that transition. Debbie's been with the organization for 23 years. We're a small organization. It's it's a lot to figure out how to get that institutional memory and get that carried over to the rest of us. So definitely a lot of focus on that. Research, collaboration, and transit planning grant development are work element 7. We're going to have a big focus on going after grants as they become available with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There's just this huge infusion for the next few years into transit and transportation projects, and we want to make sure we're poised to bring as much of that home to our region as we can. And active transportation and safety, a huge focus, as we mentioned, and we will continue that. And then we're starting it this current fiscal year, and it will go on to this next work program, which is the support for HTA's Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program grant. So when I think of sort of all the multitude, I think we have 18 active work elements with one that's left blank on purpose. But when I think about the core areas of focus and what we want to be accomplishing and, what I'm recommending, and I'm happy to, take feedback on this, but I think of the safety just being paramount. We are just not moving the needle on that, and we're still seeing catastrophic consequences all the time. So we're definitely eager to continue working towards that, and working with our partners to see where we can be useful to be helpful, especially for the most vulnerable users on the road. And then transit is also a large focus of ours, and I think at the center of these is really, in my mind, equity, because when we concern ourselves with the most vulnerable road users and we make a more robust transit system that serves our whole community, we are helping those who have been historically underinvested in and disenfranchised. So I think, our equity goals are well served by keeping these core areas in mind as our focus. And when I say what our focus is, it's, and the dollar sign at the bottom is, that's where we're going to be putting our effort by and large. We have a lot of priorities, but when we're going after those grants, when we are thinking about how to spend our staff time, that's the resources we can bring to bear. So we're always looking for additional funding opportunities to move these initiatives forward. I also think that, it's a really beautiful situation that it's not isolated. When we talk about safety for the most vulnerable road users and we talk about active transportation networks, that just builds vibrant communities. Everyone wants to live there. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. It's not like we have to focus on one group to the disadvantage of another. I think that by and large, all of these things help us achieve our climate goals that we've stated, and they help us achieve our vibrant neighborhoods goals that we have in our RTP. So it really brings it all together. And I've just, as I've learned over the last couple of years, I've really kind of honed in on this, is thinking this will advance what we're trying to accomplish. All right, so the other kind of big idea that's not specifically program focused is the proposed 34-hour work week. So In the past, traditionally, for as long as we can remember, or Debbie can remember, HCOG has always gone with a cost of living increase. Commensurate with the consumer price index. And as you know, inflation's been skyrocketing. So this year it would have been 6%. So, in talking with staff about their priorities, I would like to propose a 34-hour work week where we forgo that cost of living increase and we bring our full time down to 34 hours. And really the objectives behind this, I think it demonstrates commitment to our staff, to the well-being of our staff, and also to HCOG being an exceptional place to work. I think it will help us attract and retain exceptional employees. I think we have exceptional employees and we definitely don't want them to be moving on. And I think, we're recruiting for a key position right now. And I think having this to advertise could be really beneficial in attracting the kind of talent we would like to have for that key position. The expectations, my part that go with this is that I don't think that we will see a significant, or if at all, reduction in staff productivity. My expectation is that it really remains consistent with a service currently provided. Just looking, there's a lot of information. I don't know, it seems like you could, anybody can just see, it's like the news trends are out there, and kind of get bombarded with these different expectations that employees have in terms of their relationship to work, a lot of it coming out of COVID. And then also just the co-benefits of all of this. So you get happier and healthier, well-balanced employees who come to work more productive and ready to perform. I think, in some cases, the results are showing, this great increase in productivity. I don't expect a great increase necessarily, only because we're not disengaged already. So I think, in environments where you have a lot of disengaged staff, it really does give us this boost. I think we're working efficiently the way we are. I think with some tweaks, we can be more efficient. And I think that, we can absolutely, with these reduced hours, maintain the productivity level that everyone's accustomed to. So that is, my recommendation, again, to forego that cost of living increase. So the next steps for the overall work program would be to, one, approve this draft or direct staff to make changes. So you could, forego, you could choose not to do the 34-hour work week. You could also change the priorities that we have in here. So those are discussions we should be having at today's meeting. We would make any requested changes and then would submit this to Caltrans before March 1st. The Caltrans will give us comments, and they definitely give us comments. And so we would address all of those. And then we would return to your board for final approval before the next fiscal year, so before July 1, and make sure we have it in place to get started. And then if we do approve the reduced hour work week, we would also be coming back at that same time frame for revisions to the personnel policies to memorialize just how it would all work. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to take questions.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions, comments? Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No, thank you for that. It's an ambitious future ahead. And I, as long as the staff is on board with the change in the work week, I don't have a problem with that. It seems like a creative idea. So
I will say they are unanimously enthusiastic, to say the least.
I think looking back and working remotely through COVID and getting everything done, that didn't have to have a lot of oversight there, just check-ins and getting the product on time. I mean, it's shown that it can be done under different circumstances. So I think that portion of it I appreciate. Focus on safety, I think everyone's ready for that. And I just want to say that I appreciate the acronyms included in the overall work plan. I actually had to check out a couple things, so that's good. Any other? Supervisor Madrone.
So, when I was in high school, they were talking about this reduced work week, right? So only took 50 years. So great job. No, I fully support that. I think often if people feel valued, their productivity actually goes up. Morale goes up, retention goes up, which saves recruitment and training and all the things you talked about. So I think it's great. I'm glad to hear that staff are fully on board.
I just have to say 50 years later, and we're an early adopter. So
We still are an early adopter, absolutely.
Any online PAC or board members? Okay, I think we have one public comment up there.
This is Latanya Jacob again. I have a question reference to, do we know the number of the population of Eureka now that COVID has, they're no longer needing to commute to work from home? And the impact this has on the services, such as the transit, that this is, and as well as the pedestrian travels along the streets of Eureka. I'm just wondering what is the current population today? And does it reflect the sign that's on the road?
I don't know if that number's been quantified. So I don't believe so. I haven't seen it. I haven't read about it. I haven't even heard any discussion about it. So I know a lot of places have gone back to work. They're not all meeting remotely anymore, but I don't think that number's available.
Thank you. I just wanted to know for future references. Thank you.
And if there's no other comment, we'll entertain them.
I really appreciate all the information I'm getting today, which is a lot. And I too really appreciate the idea of keeping safety at our forefront. I think that all of our communities are suffering in regards to road and road safety. And it's no fun being number one in that kind of a category. So yeah, keep up the good work, and I look forward to moving forward.
I would move that we recommend that HCOG board adopt resolution 23-02 approving the partnership with the, oops, I'm on the wrong place, sorry. I motion that we recommend that we approve the draft fiscal year 23-24 overall work program and budget and forward to Caltrans for the review and comments, if I got that right.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Mayor Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Burgell,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
You know, I just don't feel I know enough, so I think I would abstain right now.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Yes.
Councilmember Jack West,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
PAC member Arroyo,
Yes.
and PAC member Allstrand.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to any informational items, which I don't believe we have now. So with that, we would reconvene by motion, reconvene as the HCOG board, and approve the PAC recommendations.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Oh, actually, we need a motion, I'm sorry.
I will move. I will move that action.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, that was Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Mayor Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Burgell,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Yes.
Councilmember Jack West,
Yes.
and Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
All right. Thank you. And now we come to the election of officers. If you saw in the staff report, which I'm sure Executive Director Burks was going to discuss, we would elect a chair, a vice chair, an executive committee member, a CalCog delegate, and we'll eventually at the end look for a person to serve on the Last Chance Grade Working Committee. So it'll be with that. You have anything to say? Okay, well.
Great.
Well, with that, we would first, I guess, start off with a nomination for the chair for 23-24. I mean, 20, the year 23. Any, I would be happy to continue if that's the wish of the board, yes.
I would like to be vice chair.
Well, okay. And we need a third person a third person to serve on the executive committee.
I have been that third person, and I'm happy to stay there unless someone else wants to do that. I will say I am going to throw my hat in the ring for the CalCog delegate, so just want to be transparent about that. So I'm not sitting on too many committees. If someone else wants one.
Okay. And I think we have a slate there. We can do that and then come back to the Last Chance Grade, because I'd like you to address that. Okay. So with that, we can take does we need a roll call vote or
I believe.
a motion and a roll call vote?
Mhm.
I would move that we elect Mr. Johnson as the chair, and Adeline as vice chair, and Stacy as the executive committee member and CalCog delegate, if I heard that correctly.
I would second that if I'm allowed to.
Okay, Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Mayor Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Burgell,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Yes.
Councilmember West,
Yes.
and Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
Well, thank you. I look forward to another busy year and accomplished. I mean, to think that $10 million passed through our hands doesn't feel like it, but but you can look around and see the things that have been accomplished and look ahead like we did today to see what's going to be accomplished. So thank you all. Now I'll let our executive director address the Last Chance Grade Working Group.
Yeah, thank you. So the Last Chance Grade Working Group is convened by Caltrans, and I hope Tasha can help me out if I, misstate anything. It's been going on since they really, started looking for a permanent solution for the project. Gordon Johnson, our past board member, was very active in that group, and if you'll remember when he went to site visits and things like that, he always came back with good information and details about which alternatives they were considering and things like that. At this point, the project is in the environmental phase, so they have narrowed it down to 2 alternatives, and they're just looking at doing all the environmental studies to analyze both of those alternatives, one of them being a tunnel and one of them being largely the existing alignment with very different engineering features. This group is not, my understanding is it doesn't meet at a regular interval, but more as needed as called by Caltrans. So it's not something that the HCOG board needs to necessarily vote a member onto, but just kind of consensus who's interested and who would like to go and participate on behalf of our organization. If I could ask Tasha for any additional, if she has any additional knowledge, since it is a Caltrans run group.
No, just, open to all the feedback. So if you're, getting questions, being able to bring it to the group, that would be very valuable.
Yes.
So I sit on this group as a representative for the Board of Supervisors, and I'm more than happy to bring information back to the group. But if you all would like to appoint somebody else, that'd be great as well, because Gordon was fantastic, especially with all his engineering background, et cetera. So I'm more than happy to continue that process and bring information. But again, if somebody else would like to jump in, that would be great. We are getting into the final phases of this, and I believe it was actually a group convened by Congressman Huffman as a stakeholder group to try and get out in front of these kinds of projects right out of the gate with all the environmental groups, the parks, Friends of Del Norte, and other, chambers of commerce, et cetera, so that we could hopefully try and avoid litigation costs down the road and find a amenable solution that most everybody could get behind. And so that's kind of the background and purpose of the group. So I want to make sure the congressman gets some credit for having, the foresight to try and convene these things up front.
Well, I think it's great if you're already going there. There's no need to duplicate the effort, and you're used to the terminology and the process and the history of the project. So
You bet.
I don't know how the rest of everybody feels, but
Do we need a motion to do this?
no.
Okay.
Any comments or questions from our PAC members or board members? No? Okay. Well, we will move now to the staff and PAC member reports, starting with another HCOG Executive Director's Report.
Right. For all the new people, I promise I don't usually talk this much at our board meetings, but this happens to be a banner day. So one thing to note, remember at the end of last year, we had someone come talk to us about the road charge that was being proposed in the pilot that was coming. You can now sign up to participate in that road charge pilot. You'd go to caroadcharge.com. And you would be able to, there's a button that says engage, and then you can sign up for the pilot. I know that it's not unlimited who is going to participate, but I don't think they have as many participants as they were looking for just yet. So, if that's of interest to you, then the other thing, it sounds like everyone's fully aware, but this is sort of our last, COVID waiver Zoom hybrid meeting, and we will need to resume in-person meetings. It sounds like all of you, or many of you, are mostly also aware that there is a workaround for that in the near term as well, that you can miss up to 2 meetings based on the number of meetings HCOG has. You could miss up to 2 meetings for either an emergency or just cause. And just cause has a number of features, including childcare, elder care, also being at a function for either an HCOG, traveling for an HCOG function, or for the city or county you are elected to. So if you have something like that, you would be able to still participate remotely. That remote participation comes with some extra caveats in that you need to make sure we have audio visual with those individuals the entire time, and that we would revert back to roll call voting anytime we have a remote participant. Once we're all, the full board is in the room together, we can go back to just voice voting. If you have to disclose who's in the room with you, if they're over 18 and their relationship to you. So there's a few strange little caveats. If you do need to miss a meeting and you think it qualifies for just cause, please reach out to me and we can troubleshoot that and come up with a plan, and I'll let you know what we have to do to stay compliant with the Brown Act as we take that approach. I believe this expires in 2026, and then who knows by then what changes we'll have. But just kind of throwing that out there just for information. And then we haven't had this in a while, but we had new reports from the CHP, who are doing the supplemental patrols based on our SAFE program on Highway 36 and 96. These counts are beginning November 1st, 2022. And on State Route 36, they deployed 6 times, and they issued 2 citations, 7 verbal warnings, and most importantly, they aided 20 motorists in those 6 deployments. Now here's the big one. On State Route 96, they did 17 deployments. They didn't do any citations. They did give 19 verbal warnings, but they helped. Since November, 91 motorists were assisted on State Route 96. So that's pretty phenomenal. I think, the point of the funds that we pay for these supplemental patrols is absolutely roadside safety. It is not to issue citations. So I think it really shows kind of, that they are focusing on that and how valuable it is to have extra patrols when that many people need assistance. They have been on State Route 96 more, he said, because of inclement weather. And they'll balance that out a little more as the weather improves and there's more tourism traffic and that kind of thing, like headed out to Ruth Lake, for example. But yeah, I think we're accomplishing our goals there with that many motorists assisted, and the program is proceeding. So I think that concludes all my executive director updates for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And If PAC member Allstrand could bear with me for a moment, I missed a public comment. The hand was raised and I didn't see it. And so if LaTanya has a comment to make.
Yes, my comment was, are you accepting self-nominations from the public?
No, these are board members only. Thank you. All right. PAC member Allstrand, you're back on the board now.
Hi, thank you. So it's been a while since we've provided some of those Caltrans milestones reports, and those were the just lists of current Caltrans projects. And so I'm going to start trying to provide those more regularly. So that's pretty much all I have today, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for? No, doesn't look like it. So thank you, and PAC member Arroyo.
I don't have any additional updates at this time. I really appreciate HCOG staff for all the work they did in developing the overall work program and especially everything related to transit and safety. So nothing to report beyond that at this time.
Okay, well, thank you. I will say that we have a closed session meeting following this, and it will be on, there's a public labor code for that, but I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's the executive director evaluation.
I move we go into closed session per Government Code Section 54957B1.
Second.
Point of order, can I ask a question about, I assume the PAC members are not also in that meeting, is that correct?
That's correct, it's board members.
Okay.
Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second.
Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Mayor Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Burgell,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Yes.
Councilmember West,
Yes.
and Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes. And
Okay.
so if we are going to put people in the waiting room, and I'll put you back in once the closed session's over, unless you just want to leave the meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have the option to just wait in the waiting room?
I'll put you in the waiting room, yes.
Yeah, we're doing it in here. I'm gonna go let that guy know. All right, well, we are back into session, and at this time I can report out that the evaluation was completed and we were all unanimous in our evaluation, and we appreciate the work that our executive directors are doing. So thank you. And there being no more comment or business, we will adjourn the board meeting of February 16th, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to attend.